With an intro like that, how can we go wrong? Hi folks, I'm Matt and welcome to My Expanded Universe, a show where we go through the entire expanded universe in chronological order as best I know how. Let's start off with the Golden Age of the Sith. It was a 5-issue series written by Kevin J. Anderson. It takes place 5,000 years before the Battle of Yavin. Now, when I first heard about this, I was like, 5,000 years? That is way too long! However, little did I know that 15 years later, Dawn of the Jedi would come out and go even further back than that. It actually had an issue 0, which basically gives you a lowdown of what's going on in the galaxy at this time. The series in and of itself follows 2 hyperspace navigators, Dav and Jory Daragon, and their job is to establish safe hyperspace routes throughout the galaxy. Hyperspace was relatively new, and if you established a good route, you could get paid very well for it. So it's this brother and sister team who are going out there discovering the galaxy, and lo and behold, one of their short hyperspace jumps brings them in confrontation with the Sith. Yes, Naga Shadow himself is featured in this one predominantly. Naga Shadow was someone who was talked about in the Freedom Nad Uprising book from Tales of the Jedi that came out years earlier. Now in that series, he was just a ghost. In this series, The Golden Age of the Sith, he's actually a real person, which is one of the things I liked about this series. It actually explored Naga Shadow, someone who I had an interest in, and we get to see him and explore more of what his character is. Another good character that I think Kevin J. Anderson puts together is a Hutt called Arba. He's fantastic. He's actually a kind Hutt, which you never see in the expanded universe. Kevin J. Anderson took a Hutt and kind of broke the persona of them being these evil and deceptive creatures and made this one kind of kind, which he didn't play a big role in the series, but overall he was an interesting character. Now after that, you need to go to the Lost Tribe of the Sith. It's a book written by John Jackson Miller, and it's all 9 collectible short stories he wrote, all in one. I would buy the book because you can only download for free the first 8 stories. The 9th story is exclusive to the trade paperback. So I would go ahead and get the paperback book overall if you're interested in reading it. But when you read it, you only need to read the first 2 stories, which would be Precipice and Skyborn. And this happens during the Great Hyperspace War. It follows a Sith mining vessel called the Omen, which crashes on an undiscovered world called Kesh. And then you follow this lost tribe of the Sith through the millennia leading up to the Fate of the Jedi series, which is where they're featured in. It was what was happening at the time. The question may be asked, do I have to read all 9 short stories at once? No, you don't. I would just say the first 2 because we're doing them in chronological order. Now if you want to, go ahead. But I'm trying to do it in chronological order, which is I say read the first 2. Once you finish reading those short stories by John Jackson Miller, it's time to return to the Dark Horse comic books and their depiction of the Great Hyperspace War through the fall of the Sith Empire. This was another 5-issue series written by Kevin J. Anderson talking about the conclusion of Golden Age of the Sith, following the Daragon siblings and the end of Naga Shadow. They actually made 2 alternate covers for the first issue, something I didn't know until I was reviewing this series again. I had to go back through all my original comic books, and I noticed there were 2 different issues for number 1. That was really crazy, especially now that you see there's 45 issues for the new Marvel Star Wars number 1. But 2 alternate issues, I thought that was interesting. By the way, you should never collect the individual issues. Go get the trade paperbacks. They are a lot nicer, especially that omnibus copy. If I had to do it all over again, I would get those. Now I bought the actual comic books when they came out, which is why I have all the individual issues. But a trade paperback would fit on a bookshelf. You won't have to go through each individual bag to reach every series. So get the trades, it's well worth it, and it'll save you money, a lot of money. After you read that comic book series, you need to go back to the short stories from John Jackson Miller. They're titled Paragon and Savior. Now, what did I think of the Lost Tribe of the Sith in general? In general, it was okay. Wasn't bad, wasn't good. Someone recently asked me what books they should get, and they had all these Sith novels, and I actually ranked that one at the bottom. Not because I hated it, but just because it's kind of hard to follow, because it's a bunch of short stories, first off, and they don't all flow together. Some of them happen 1,000 years in between. So you have to jump ahead, learn about new characters, learn about the new civilization that's there, and that's kind of hard to just reinvest in that story. Now, it does tie into the Fate of the Jedi series at the end, so for that reason alone, yeah, it's worth your time if you want to read it. And if you want to read it in accordance to the Old Republic, it would fit in there too, but basically they're on an isolated planet, so their story doesn't really impact either one of the other stories going on. But like I said, if you want to learn more about it, go right ahead. One of the other things I love about the Old Republic is it's very visual instead of literary. And I'll explain. We have a lot of novels within the expanded universe, but very few in the Old Republic. We have a lot of comic books and video games within the Old Republic, and I think that's great because it shows a different style, a more archaic era in the galaxy where things just look and felt different. And I like the look and feel of these comic books. The Tales of the Jedi in general, all the artists get big props for coming up with some great costume design, great ships design and droids, what have you. The Golden Age of the Sith and the Fall of the Sith Empire are pretty good. They are the beginning of the Old Republic, so any Old Republic fan, yeah, go ahead and get those books. Okay, folks, that's all for now. Join me next week for another video.